A deadly shooting at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. That's about 24 miles northwest of New Haven. A law enforcement official has told CBS News Justice correspondent Bob Orr that one child has been killed and one gunman is dead as well. We do not know the gunman's identity or motive or if he acted alone. 3 people were taken to the hospital, and the Associated Press is quoting an ambulance dispatcher as saying one of them is a teacher who was shot in the foot. This all began just after 9:30 Eastern Time this morning at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. The school has kindergarten through 4th grade students, and the children are ages 5 through 10.
December 14th, 2012. This was the day that Adam Lanza marched into Sandy Hook Elementary School and began firing, ending in 26 people dead, most of them children. In addition to sparking debate about gun control and mental health, people began to wonder what else could have led to such a disaster. When it was discovered that Adam was an avid video game player, his love of games started to share the blame. The belief that video games cause violence is common. But why? What has caused this misinformation of the public and the criminalization of video games?
A few hours of mindless violence today at a suburban high school outside Denver. 2 kids are believed to have killed and wounded about 50 of their classmates, and then killed themselves.
The proposition that violent behavior is somehow connected to video games is not a new idea. In 1999, when the tragedy at Columbine happened, video games were one of the first things put into the media spotlight. It was reported that both of the students who were responsible for the shooting were fans of the relatively new and advanced video game Doom by id Software, which at the time was considered to be incredibly brutal and gore-filled. At this point in time, the technology that powered video games was rather new, with most games consisting of a few lines of text on a screen. The incident set up a precedent of fear of video games because of their interactivity, accessibility, and violent nature that was combined in a way that was never seen before. This precedent lasted throughout the ages and is now even being talked about today. One major issue connected to potential violence in video games is that kids start playing violent video games at a very young age. Often when a child wants a video game, their parents buy it for them with little or no prior knowledge about what the game actually contains. Only 5% of parents actually discuss video games with their children, and only 1% have any say in what they are playing at all. Over 97% of teenagers play video games, 66% of which contain violence. Over 90% of games rated for children 10 years or older by the ESRB contain at least some form of violence. The games that sold best in 2012 contain violence. Starting with Doom in 1993, first-person shooters are often bestsellers, due to their immersiveness and exhilarating pace. Since then, shooters have dominated the market, with games such as Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Gears of War breaking multiple release records and selling over 160 million copies in 2011. While being immersed may lead to a more enjoyable experience, it can also have some unexpected side effects. With ever more powerful computers and advanced graphical technology, video games are becoming more realistic and harder to distinguish from actual footage. Having such a similarity to the real world can desensitize a player to real-world violence, skewing their moral compass and making violent acts seem less wrong. A study performed by the Indiana University School of Medicine showed that within 30 minutes of playing a violent video game, children started to show a decrease in activity in parts of the brain related to self-control, inhibition, and attention. Since the 1950s, more than 1,000 studies have been done on the effects of violence in televisions and movies. The majority of these studies conclude that children who watch significant amounts of television and movie violence are more likely to exhibit aggressive behavior, attitudes, and values. This study can be applied even more so to video games, as they exhibit the same amounts of violence while also requiring user input. In another study, playing violent video games for an extended amount of time led to an increase in aggressive behavior in the subjects. Credible associations such as the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychological Association, the American Academy of Family Physicians, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry have all taken the position that violent media harms children.
If video games are so violent, what is the point of having them at all? As it turns out, most video games, even if they contain some form of violence, are creative and inspire the player to focus more on building or solving puzzles, rather than person-to-person conflict. In a study of 500 12-year-old children, it was found that an increase in video game playing led to an increase in creativity when producing drawings or stories. Games like Minecraft, developed by Mojang, inspire the player to build whatever they choose, from castles to spacecrafts to underwater cities. Portal, a game developed by Valve, focuses on puzzle solving and thinking in unique ways. People play these games to relax, relieve stress, and have fun. In addition to relaxing and having fun, playing video games can help improve mental acuity and focus. A charity called Child's Play is also using video games to help children with illnesses, such as cancer, to have fun despite their circumstances. It supplies video games and video gaming hardware to hospitals around the country. Not only are video games beneficial to developing creativity and an aid for the ill, but they have become a part of not only American culture, but culture worldwide. In 2011 alone, the total amount of money spent on video games, hardware, and accessories reached $24.7 billion, making games one of the largest entertainment industries in the United States. As stated earlier, 97% of teens play video games in some capacity, over 75% of which are not considered to be violent for children. Sharing an interest in something with 97% of one's peers is important in creating networking and friends and establishing common bonds with someone that one might not get to know. Most games now have online connectivity, allowing friends to play with each other even if they are not in the same room, state, or country. Conventions such as Penny Arcade Expo, Electronic Entertainment Expo, and Game Developers Conference have developed massive followings, with attendance reaching into the tens of hundreds of thousands. Some gamers have turned their love of gaming into a livelihood, either producing videos for YouTube or competing in Major League Gaming tournaments. Fans of video games make their own series called machinimas, using the environments provided to them by the game's engine or world. Even this large following is the tip of an iceberg. Besides the big-name conventions and careers, average people are playing video games in their own home, sometimes for hours a day. The studies and arguments supporting video games as a source of violence often conflicts with other studies. According to Dr. Christopher Ferguson, a professor of psychology from Texas A&M, the aggression that is recorded in studies has no link to physical violence. Many of the tests which measure a correlation between video games and aggression are purely observatory and do not measure any cause and effect scenarios. In addition, the Free Expression Policy Project said, somewhere between 200 and 300 studies have been done on media violence, not the thousands, as some activists have claimed, and the results are dubious and inconsistent. Often during the research, the researchers record the number of violent acts instead of the magnitude of the violence. As such, every action is weighed the same, whether it is a full-on tantrum or a simple increase in heart rate. This skews the data and makes there appear to be more aggressive behavior than there actually is. The general populace often falsely interprets aggressive as meaning violent, which helps create the belief that video games cause violence. In the words of Brad Bushman, a communications and psychology professor at Ohio State, it is impossible to know whether playing violent video games causes violent criminal behavior, such as the Newtown shootings, because in our laboratory experiments we can't give people guns to see if they shoot each other with them. In a letter to the Vice President Joe Biden, Daniel Greenberg of the International Game Developers Association said the nonprofit group would welcome more evidence-based research into the effects of our work to add to the large body of existing scientific literature that clearly shows no causal link between video game violence and real-world violence. In fact, since the rise in popularity of video games, violence has decreased. The reason that some people who commit violent acts are fans of video games is because they are everywhere.
So where does this leave us? While some video games may contain violence, and exposing children to violent media certainly is an issue, there is more to video games than just their violence. Video games have been a popular form of entertainment since their invention, and continue to be so. They contribute much to society in terms of culture, education, and entertainment. Just because some studies think that they may create violent tendencies, which some people vilify them for, it doesn't change the fact that they are an overall benefit to society, and should not be considered as motivation for violent actions.